The galaxy is full of monsters, but most of them have the decency to be made of flesh and bone. They have hearts you can pierce and heads you can take. But the Grey Goo was different. It wasn't a species, it was a mistake. Born in a high-security lab on the industrial moon of Acheron, the Project Midas nanobots were designed to be the ultimate construction tool. Microscopic machines capable of rearranging molecules to build cities in days. But a single line of corrupted code turned the builders into consumers. The swarm didn't just build, it converted. It saw the entire moon as raw material. Within the first 6 hours, 3 major manufacturing hubs were gone, not destroyed but unmade. Skyscrapers didn't fall. They dissolved into shimmering silver sand as a billion microscopic mandibles chewed through the titanium girders. We watched as a battalion of heavy tanks was engulfed by what looked like a harmless silver fog. 10 seconds later, the fog moved on, leaving behind nothing but clean, polished concrete. To the Nano-Swarm, humanity wasn't an enemy, we were just an inefficient collection of carbon and trace minerals waiting to be recycled. They thought the swarm was unstoppable because it was too small to hit. They assumed that because you couldn't shoot a cloud with a railgun, the moon of Acheron was already dead. They believed that once the Midas touch began, the only solution was orbital bombardment. They were catastrophically wrong. They forgot that even the smallest machine has a melting point. They forgot that while you can't kill a cloud with a bullet, you can certainly erase it with a furnace. If the Nano-Swarm wanted to turn our world into silver dust, we decided to turn the atmosphere into a sea of fire. We created the incineration grid protocol. And we birthed the 9th thermal containment unit, the Scorch-Squad. We don't use conventional ballistics. A bullet passing through a swarm is like a needle passing through smoke. Instead, we use plasma jets, heavy dual-tank thermal projectors that fire a concentrated stream of ionized blue flame reaching temperatures of 5,000 degrees. We don't wear stealth suits. We wear exoplate heavy armor, lined with ceramic heat shields and liquid nitrogen cooling loops. Our primary secondary tool is the vacuum grenade, a device that creates a localized high-intensity suction vortex to pull the swarm into a single point before we ignite it. We are the only soldiers in the galaxy who can stand in the middle of a silver fog and not be eaten alive. We are the Scorch-Squad and we're about to burn the Midas out of the machines. I am Captain Elias Cinder Vane. My fuel tanks are currently vibrating with the pressure of 1,000 liters of pressurized plasma, and my visor is tracking a silver wall of death that's currently 5 blocks away and moving fast. And I'm about to turn up the heat. The mission was the Sanctuary Hold. The Nano-Swarm had reached the primary residential spire of Sector G7, where 10,000 civilians were trapped behind a failing magnetic shield. If the swarm breached that shield, the spire wouldn't just be destroyed, it would be consumed. The civilians wouldn't even have bodies to bury. Ignite the pilots. Keep the spread wide. Don't let the silver touch your seals. I roared over the subvocal link. The sound of my own breath was a heavy, mechanical rasp inside the helmet. Scorch 2, Sarah. The swarm is jumping the rooftops. I'm seeing high-density clusters forming in the ventilation shafts. They're looking for a way around the heat. Scorch 3, Jax. Vacuum grenades primed. I've got a massive surge coming through the main transit tunnel. It looks like a silver tidal wave, Cinder. I stood at the mouth of the transit tunnel, my boots anchored to the ground. The sound was a dry, endless hiss. The sound of a billion tiny teeth grinding against each other. It was a noise that made your skin crawl. That I saw it. The silver fog rolled around the corner, thick and shimmering under the flickering neon signs of the district. It moved with a horrifying liquid intelligence, sensing the heat of my armor and the carbon of my body. It didn't roar, it just surged. Open fire. I squeezed the triggers. The soul igniter on my shoulder roared to life. A twin stream of brilliant blue plasma erupted from the nozzles, cutting into the silver fog like a blade through silk. Where the fire hit, the air itself seemed to scream. The microscopic machines didn't just break, they vaporized. A massive cloud of orange sparks and molten slag fell to the ground, the liquid remains of the swarm cooling into harmless, distorted lumps of metal. Sarah. Jax. Cross the streams. Create a wall. We stood in a line, 300 meters of pure, unadulterated thermal fury. The blue fire created a barrier that the swarm couldn't cross. They tried to go over us, leaping from the ledges of the surrounding buildings, but we tilted the projectors upward, turning the sky into a ceiling of flame. The rain, a constant toxic drizzle on Acheron, was vaporizing before it could hit the ground, filling the street with a thick, blinding steam. They're adapting. They're forming shield shells. Jax yelled. The swarm began to change its behavior. Instead of a loose cloud, the nanobots began to link together, forming massive rotating spheres of silver matter. The outer layers of these spheres were sacrificed to the heat, melting into a protective shell that allowed the core of the swarm to get closer to us. A 10-meter sphere of silver death was rolling toward my position, ignoring the plasma fire. Vacuum grenade. Now. Jax launched a grenade. It hit the center of the silver sphere and detonated, not with an explosion but with a silent, terrifying pull. The air was sucked out of the street, and the silver sphere was violently inverted, its internal structure pulled into a single dense point. Finish it. I unleashed a concentrated burst of maximum intensity flame. The blue fire hit the compressed mass of the swarm, and the resulting thermal reaction was absolute. The silver sphere didn't just melt, it detonated, a shower of molten white-hot metal spraying across the pavement. The shield is failing at the spire. We're running out of time. The magnetic shield protecting the residential tower was flickering, turning from blue to a dangerous, static-filled red. The Nano-Swarm had found a way to short the generators by sacrificing millions of units into the energy field. Push through. We're taking the hub. We charged. It was a grueling slow-motion crawl through a world that was trying to eat us. Every step was a battle against the goo that was coating the street. The silver dust was inches deep now, slippery and treacherous. We used short bursts of flame to clear the path, our armor hissing as the liquid nitrogen cooling loops worked at 300% capacity to keep us from cooking inside our own plates. We reached the spire's primary generator hub. The silver fog was everywhere, a dense wall of shimmering death that was currently swirling around the central power pylon. I could see the metal of the pylon pitting and scarring as the nanobots ate through the protective coating. Sarah, Jax, cover the vents. I'm going for this static pulse. I slung my flamethrower and grabbed the null spike from my back, a heavy copper-wrapped rod designed to release a massive electromagnetic pulse. I didn't need to hack the machines, I needed to fry their brains. I sprinted toward the pylon, the silver swarm lunging at me like a physical beast. They coated my gauntlets, their tiny mandibles grinding against the ceramic plating. My HUD was flashing 1,000 warnings: integrity compromised, thermal overload, seal breach imminent. I ignored it all. I reached the base of the pylon and jammed the null spike into the primary maintenance port. Sarah. Jax. Give me the overburn. The two Scorch members turned their plasma jets toward me, not at me but around me, creating a sphere of fire that temporarily pushed the swarm back and gave the spike the heat it needed to activate its thermal battery. Now. I triggered the detonator. There was no sound, only a massive, invisible ripple that traveled through the air, the ground, and the very fabric of the moon. The static pulse hit the swarm like a physical hammer. The silver cloud didn't explode, it just stopped. The billion microscopic machines, their internal circuits fried by the EMP, lost their cohesion. The silver fog, once a sentient and lethal predator, became what it always should have been, just dust. The shimmering clouds fell from the sky, a silent rain of gray powder that covered everything in a harmless, inert blanket. The Midas touch was dead. I fell to my knees, my armor scorched black and white, the cooling fans letting out a long dying whine. I pulled off my helmet, the cold, sulphurous air of Acheron hitting my sweat-soaked face. I looked up at the residential spire. The magnetic shield had finally failed, but it didn't matter. The enemy was gone. The civilians inside were safe. I looked at my gauntlets. They were pitted and scarred, the ceramic plates chewed away in places, but the seals had held. The gray goo was now just a layer of ash beneath my boots. Sarah walked over, her own armor steaming in the cold rain. She looked at the mounds of inert silver dust piled up against the buildings. It's quiet, Cinder. Too quiet. It's the sound of a world that didn't get eaten, Sarah. I stood up, the weight of the exoplate feeling like a part of my own body. We looked down the street at the remains of District 9. The factories were scarred, the neon signs were broken, and the city was battered. But it was still standing. The Nano-Swarm had tried to rewrite the moon into its own image, and we had burned the manuscript. I picked up my flamethrower and checked the remaining fuel. 10%. Enough to get back to the extraction point. We didn't need a mission report or a tactical breakdown. The gray ash on our boots said everything that needed to be said. We walked away from the spire, our boots crunching on the million dead machines that had tried to consume the future. The silver has turned to ash. The fire has faded. The moon of Acheron belongs to the living once again.